There was a very famous monastery that had fallen upon hard times. Formerly, many of the buildings were filled with monks, and the singing of the chant filled the air coming from the church. People no longer came there to be nourished by prayer, and there was just a handful of old monks who shuffled up and down the corridors, praising their God with a heavy heart. On the edge of the monastery woods, an old rabbi had built a hut. He would come there from time to pray and fast. No one ever spoke to him, but whenever he appeared, the word would be passed from monk to monk, "The rabbi walks in the wood." And as long as he was there, they could feel sustained by his prayerful presence. One day, the abbot decided to go and visit the rabbi and to open up his heart to him. And so after morning prayers, he went off into the woods, and he came upon the rabbi's hut. And the rabbi was standing there in the doorway, his arms outstretched in welcome. After a while, the rabbi suggested that they go inside. And in the middle of the room was a wooden table. And on top of the table, the scriptures were open. They both sat down, and the rabbi began to cry. And the abbot could no longer contain his own tears. And for the first time in his life, he cried his heart out. After the tears had ceased to flow and all was quiet, the rabbi lifted his head. He said, "You and your brothers are serving God with a very heavy heart. You have come here to ask a teaching of me, and I will give you a teaching, but you can only pronounce it once. It must never be spoken again." The rabbi looked at the abbot and he said, "The Messiah is among you." They sat there in silence, and then he turned to the abbot and said, "Now you must go." The next morning, the abbot called all the monks together, and he told them he had a teaching from the rabbi who walks in the woods, and that his teaching must never again be spoken aloud. And he looked at each of his brothers and said, "The rabbi said, one of us is the Messiah." The monks were startled by this. Is it Brother John? Is it Father Tom? Is it Brother Bill? Is it me? What does he mean? And they were all puzzled, but nobody ever mentioned it again. As time went on, the monks began to treat one another with a very special reverence. There was a gentle, wholehearted being about them, which was very hard to describe, but very easy to see. As time went on, they lived with one another as men who had finally found something. They prayed the scriptures together as men who were looking for something else. And occasionally visitors came by, and they started to come from far and wide. They were so edified with the prayer life of these monks. And now young men were coming to the monastery seeking admission to the community. In those days, the rabbi no longer walked in the woods. His hut has fallen into ruin. But somehow or other, The old monks had taken to heart the rabbi's teaching, and they felt sustained by his prayerful presence.